What is going on YouTube? Just helping you out here. And in this video, I am going to be reviewing the Nike Downshifter 10 running shoe. This particular pair I used for about a year and a half, and it was essentially my daily shoe. So I was going to the store, I was going to work, I was going to the gym for walks, runs, you name it. These were the shoes that I had on my feet. And in terms of running, I probably went to the gym about 3 to 4 times a week, and each of those times I probably ran for about 1 to 3 miles on the treadmill. Now the break-in period for these I would say was pretty average, about 1 to 2 weeks, and I will say this shoe was more comfortable than what I find typical for a brand new shoe. For me, brand new shoes usually feel a little strange just because my feet aren't used to them yet, and that was no different for these, but the difference here was there wasn't any discomfort or tight areas that needed to be worked out. It simply just felt out of the ordinary because I wasn't used to it. Alright, now I'd like to take a look at the different areas of the shoe so I can show you how these shoes wore down over time and maybe some positives and negatives that I noticed with the shoe as time went on. So as always with my shoe videos, I'd like to get started with the sole. This right here is the left shoe, and this is what I'm going to use to show most of the wear and tear. I will also show the right shoe at times, but most of the wear and tear is pretty symmetrical, so it'll all look pretty similar. Alright, so I'm first going to get started with the toe area, and the first thing I'd like to point out is that a majority of this toe area is actually pretty smooth, so all of this and this and this up here, so really all of this right here is pretty smoothed out. As you can see from the picture on the right, which is a screenshot from the footage that I used when I made the unboxing video for these shoes, you'll notice that this section, and this section up here all had very clear and defined segments within it, and those are long gone. Those segments also had a very fine dotted pattern, but that was only a thin layer on the surface. Now on top of those areas just being completely smoothed out, you'll also see that there's sections where the black rubber here was actually so worn that it got through to this white bottom piece here. So you'll see that right here, and you'll also see that up here. Now if we look at these two white lines here, you'll see in the unboxing video that those were very clear and defined divots. This one right here is pretty smoothed out, whereas this one just looks like a big crack in the rubber. Now if we move on to the middle here, you'll see that a lot of the original detail here was retained. Now if we move to the back, you'll see this is very similar to the area we discussed first. Right here and right here in these black sections is completely smoothed out, and it has also worn so much that it got through that black part and made its way to this white rubber here, and even a little bit along this edge here. Now in this middle area here, you can see the Nike logo is worn, but still visible, as well as this lined pattern that goes all the way up into here. Now the last thing that I'd like to point out about the sole is that it is quite discolored. So the original shoe did have all of these accents as a very bright white, but now they've kind of turned into a tan light grayish, and there are also a lot of speckles in all the black areas, in addition to some more obvious concentrated stains. It's pretty interesting. Right here it looks like there's some lettering that is between the white rubber and the black rubber. Now it isn't as obvious on this pair of shoes, but typically the wear that I see on my shoes is right here and right here, because I tend to put a little added pressure on the inner side of my foot as opposed to the outside. And what it actually does is it causes the shoes to start slanting a little bit because this side is being worn down faster than this side. And eventually it gets bad enough that my feet start to hurt. And that is actually the reason why I stopped wearing these shoes. But even though these areas did get pretty smoothed out, I didn't notice any change in traction. And now just so you can see the similarities, here is the right shoe. You can see the wear on both shoes is fairly similar. Alright, so I think that's enough about the sole, and so now we're going to go ahead and move up to the midsole. Now because the midsole is not directly in contact with the ground for the most part, it has retained a lot of the details from when it was brand new. It has really only lost its detail in this area right here. The main differences are the discoloration. So again, we now have a tannish gray tint, and you can see there are various spots where there's some random little stains, but the discoloration on this part of the shoe is definitely not as bad as the sole. Now the only other detail that I want to mention here is these crease marks that you can see right here. Some of these were definitely present when the shoe was brand new, but after all the compression of wearing these shoes, they certainly have gotten worse. And again, here's the other shoe for comparison, and the crease marks on this one actually look a bit worse. Now if we move up to the main body of the shoe up here, you can see that not much has changed. The only difference I want to point out is that you can see the Nike sign here got a bit dirty, and it has peeled up a little bit at the bottom here, but that isn't very noticeable, and it's far from falling off. And if we bring in the other one, you can see it's the same thing. Now we can go ahead and take a look at the front of the shoe. That doesn't look any different. Now if we move to the inner side of the shoe, you can again see the discoloration of the midsole on this side as well, and you can see these crease marks are actually much worse on this side. And you can even see some that are in this right here. This Nike sign looks a little bit less decolored and more intact than the other one, but that makes sense since it's on the inner side of the shoe and kind of less exposed to the environment around you. Now if we take a quick look at the other one, you can see the same thing. The midsole is discolored and has a lot of those creases, and what's interesting is that of all the Nike signs on the shoe, this one is coming off the most. Alright, now if we go ahead and move on to the back, again with the discolored midsole, but the only thing that I really want to mention is that we have sort of a crease right here. It's a little more obvious when I push down on this here, but that is simply from this getting crushed down a little bit when you're trying to put on the shoe. And you'd see something very similar with the other shoe, as well as both these running Nike letterings being a little worn. Alright, so now I'm going to move on to the toe box, and you can see this looks quite a bit different than the brand new one. The toe box and the mesh just kind of look distorted, so it's stretched and has formed some of these creases and bubble looking things. And you'll also notice this little stain right here, and that came from walking outside when there was a mix of snow, salt, and brine on the road. Now a couple more things that I want to mention about this mesh is that it actually is fairly durable. There were several times that I caught it on something when I was walking by or just maybe sitting down or something, and it never ripped once. And there were several times that when it did happen, I thought immediately like, oh no, I definitely just ripped my shoe, but I looked down and it looked completely fine. So I was very pleased with the durability of it, and it's actually also very breathable. So my feet tend to get pretty sweaty when I run, but these do help keep them cool, especially the times that I've ran in cooler weather. You can definitely feel the breeze on your foot while you're running. My feet definitely still got hot, they definitely were still sweating, but these definitely kept them cooler than others that I've tried in the past. And if we take a quick look at the other shoe, you'll see that it looks very similar. Alright, so now if we go ahead and move up to the shoelace area, it mostly looks the same as the toe box, maybe a little bit warped, a little bit stained, but for the most part the detail is still the same as when it was brand new. And the laces have actually held up pretty well. They're maybe a little bit worn and a little bit ratty, but I'd say it's fairly average, nothing crazy. And the aglets on these shoes are a bit destroyed, but I don't want to talk about these much just because my dog actually did this. It wasn't just from regular wear and tear, so nothing really to mention there. And again, if we look at the other shoe, you'll see the same thing. Alright, so now the last thing that I want to talk about is the inside of the shoe. So the first thing I want to talk about on the inside is this mark that you can see right there. And what that is my ankle bone actually was rubbing on the side of the heel here, and it caused it to go through the mesh. And if you listen, it's actually the exposed plastic that is keeping this heel and ankle area sturdy. Now, interestingly enough, even though it is exposed, it's hard, and you would think that rubbing would be uncomfortable. I never noticed any discomfort with this. It didn't cause me any pain or anything, and I actually didn't even notice it until I was preparing for this review video. So I would consider that a very minor issue. Now I will say that the padding and shape and stability of this ankle and heel area is perfectly fine. There's nothing special about it, but there's also nothing that I would complain about. It was comfortable, and it remained comfortable throughout the time that I was wearing the shoes. And pretty much the same thing goes for the insole as well. When I first put these on, it had a little bit of give to it, so your foot kind of sank in a tiny bit, not a lot. There's definitely shoes that I've worn that it sunk in way more, but it also wasn't, hard as a rock and nothing at all. So similar to this whole ankle area, the insoles were comfortable, and they remained comfortable throughout the time that I wore the shoes. And on the other shoe, you can see that a very similar thing happened. Alright, so overall, I thought this was a very solid shoe. It was comfortable, it was durable, it was reliable. I didn't have any discomforts whatsoever. I didn't have any major issues with it whatsoever. I'd be totally happy wearing another pair of these, and I would definitely recommend them to anybody else. Alright, so that's about it for this review video. Feel free to check out all my other review videos in the playlist in the top left corner. If you enjoyed this one, please drop a like, Leave a comment if you have any questions or an idea for a future video. Feel free to follow my Instagram and TikTok in the description below. And lastly, please don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends about my channel so I can grow and help more of you guys out. I'm just helping you out. See you in the next video.